All right. Good afternoon, everyone. If you see myself, if you see Muffy, that means it is Tuesday at 12 p.m. and we are here with our PGH 2050 Planning with a Purpose podcast, which is a weekly live stream hosted by myself and fellow community builder Muffy Mendoza. Before we jump into anything, Muffy, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, like Tony the Tiger.
That's good to hear, my friend. That's good to hear. I'm excited
How
to.
are you? Wait, how are you?
I'm good.
Good.
It's the leaves are falling. The weather, the aesthetic outside is gorgeous with the fall. I love fall, and I love sweaters, and I love long sleeve
Yeah,
shirts. So I'm feeling good today.
good.
Um, Thank you for joining us. It is Tuesday at 12 with the Planning with the Purpose podcast. We'll be bringing every week city leaders, everyday residents, and thought partners to the table to break down the city of Pittsburgh's comprehensive plan. In this space, we're looking to share stories from across communities, highlight why inclusive city planning matters for the future. You can catch us here on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and each episode invites listeners to learn, engage, and imagine a sustainable, thriving Pittsburgh one conversation at a time. Today we are joined by another member of our team. We're so excited to have Ethan Lay Sleeper from Sasaki Design here with us. How are you doing, Ethan?
I'm doing great. I love fall too, Alyssa. So
Do you?
it's my
I love,
spirit season. Yeah.
yeah, the hats and the long sleeve shirts. It's the best part.
And the
So,
jean jackets,
oh,
With
a good
jean
jean
jackets.
jacket.
Yep.
I do love a good jean jacket. Ethan, we're so excited to have you here with us, and we're gonna jump right in. Tell me a little bit about your role at Sasaki and how you're involved in the city of Pittsburgh's comprehensive plan.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a senior planner and project manager at Sasaki, and Sasaki as a firm has been working with the engagement team, really leading up the digital engagement portion of the scope. And we're partnered with Common Cause Consultants, who's really kind of leading up the efforts on the ground in Pittsburgh, along with other locals like Muffy, Alyssa, One Hood, and others. So, we've been all working together over the last year and a half, putting together all kinds of robust digital and in-person engagement work to really hear from Pittsburghers about, what are their hopes and dreams for the future of the city.
That's awesome. And for those who may not be familiar, or I think even in your own words, can you give us a quick overview of what a comp plan is, or what is it aiming to achieve by 2050? We're already in 2026, right? The year is over. That's about 24
Yeah.
years away. It can go by quickly. The goal, what are we
And
aiming
it's a.
to achieve?
I was just joking. Go ahead.
Yeah. So really, a comprehensive plan is meant to help guide the city make strategic decisions about how and where to grow over a long period of time. And in the RFP, there were, I think, over 20 topic areas that, the plan is supposed to address. But, a lot of these can really be distilled into these large issues related to kind of housing and land use policy, to jobs and economic development, and to mobility infrastructure, how folks get around, and also, sustainability and resiliency, especially, with some of the, steep slopes and rivers in Pittsburgh, landslides, flooding, and the like. And, how does the city and the 9 different council districts, the 90 different neighborhoods, how do you kind of tie that all together and create a direction that helps all Pittsburghers move forward in a way and benefit from a really inclusive planning process across all of those topic areas. So really, that's one of the overarching principles in the whole process, is the just transition, and that emerged out of kind of labor practices in the 80s, and this theory that, like, as industries kind of modernize and become more sustainable, not everybody always benefits. So the idea for this comprehensive plan, as we're tackling all these issues, is that we really want to make sure that folks in all of the neighborhoods can benefit from these decisions. And so that's what a lot of the engagement work we're doing at this point in the process. Now we're in kind of phase 4 of the process, which is looking at scenarios, and we're getting inputs from folks on these different policy ingredients. And we're about to roll out a new digital survey that is going to let people comment and understand on these different policy directions. What are their biggest hopes and fears relative to those benefits and trade-offs? Because obviously this 25-year plan, there's an opportunity to spend a lot of money, and folks are going to have to figure out how to prioritize which direction to go, and ultimately which policies or specific construction projects or actions they want to support.
Absolutely. And my final question for you before I kick it over to Muffy is, you've worked on planning projects in other cities, I'm assuming, and I'm curious about what feels unique or special about how Pittsburgh is approaching the process. I think you even said it in the personality. We have 90 neighborhoods, multiple spaces, multiple municipalities, multiple counties. How is this different? What makes Pittsburgh unique or special about how they're approaching the comprehensive planning process?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot that makes Pittsburgh really unique. The geography, topography, the fact that the city's kind of shrunken in population drastically, almost halved in the last half century, and Pittsburgh has seen the impacts of kind of urban renewal projects in the Hill District of SR 65 going through Manchester. There's been some real, poor planning choices made that have really disproportionately impacted the Black community specifically. And I think that from the outset, the planning process has been set up to try to intentionally include as many people as possible, and especially those who are harder to reach and not typically included in these big planning processes. And one of the ways the city tried to ensure that happened from the outset was to have 2 different RFPs. So there was one RFP for the quote, like technical planning work, and another one just for the engagement. So I think that really put an emphasis on the importance of engagement right from the beginning. And that's also how, we did go in as a broader kind of team of teams, but we did structure the engagement such that the majority of the budget is really going to local firms, to minority-owned businesses, and also, to some level of controversy in the budget approval process, paying community members for their time to, make it easier for folks who, time is money, for them to be able to participate in this kind of a process, which, isn't always accessible to folks who are, working in like food service or, single moms. It's hard to get out to these meetings and participate in these complex processes. So we've really tried to be really intentional about reaching out to those folks, and even including, Muffy, her organization, Brown Mamas, on the comp plan team as a consultant. So I think that's, from the outset, that's when it has to happen, that type of strategic community engagement outreach. So I think that's really set this process aside from other processes that I've worked on in the past.
That's really awesome to hear. And, shout out all the work over the summer to hand out all that funding to the Summer of Engagement recipients. It was awesome to see how many people kind of flooded to the plan and had ideas from art to anything that you can think of, a block party, community party. And it was nice to see how the comp plan was in all of those spaces with their table, and the staff was there. So that was one of my favorite parts of the plan, is the Summer of Engagement, and really paying people to participate, to say, we want to be a part of your ideas and your conversations. And this is the way that we can kind of give back to you as you help us out in this process. So I thought that was an awesome part of the plan for sure.
I agree. And I think it empowered me to really look at my position in community, and also I think what this plan has done differently, like you said, is encourage people who normally would be disenfranchised by this process to be a part of the process. I know at the last scenario planning workshop, I sat next to some women that I really admire, and as we looked at the different scenarios, we're able to see like how everything was so interconnected, and how like there were certain key themes that were necessary, no matter whether we focused on being an attainable city or being a climate ready city. There were just certain themes. And so I guess I want to just talk a little bit about that and talk about the need for these scenario planning workshops, but also just the need to have community members, as a part of this, and what's kind of rising to the surface as we go through this process. What have you seen as like some key themes that are just kind of like that are there no matter what we're focusing on, that has come straight from community?
Yeah. So I think last time I saw both of you in person was, I think, 2 weeks ago or so, at the first set of scenario workshops, and I was leading a table discussing the policy ingredient around jobs and economic mobility, and it was interesting to the way the event was structured. It was, folks would have time to go to two of the policy ingredients, and in both of my kind of sets of discussions, folks were consistently bringing in issues of mobility and housing to the jobs and economy conversation. But also what came up in that meeting was also how the comprehensive plan can start to influence or interface with the Pittsburgh public schools, and the importance of neighborhood schools, but also like equity across schools. And there's some bigger structural issues with how the school system is set up and how the city government is set up. But I think schools are such an important part of any community that I think that the comprehensive plan needs to figure out how to come up with a set of recommendations to effectively manage education, which is a major component of like future opportunity for folks, whether that's means like graduating high school, but even looking ahead to what like potential new industries might be interested in moving to Pittsburgh, and how you could think about some of the higher ed institutions providing like workforce training that can help folks who are middle-aged be able to get new job opportunities in some of these industries that are growing, and looking at relocating to the Pittsburgh region, Allegheny County.
Yeah, and I think that is something. I'm glad you brought that up, because both of the tables I set out, like education just kept coming up as an issue. And it was like, especially now with these community schools, how some schools are, they're actually restructuring to become not just places where people are educated, but places where parents go to get access to supportive services, places where people go to rally around certain, specific topics that are important to the community. So I think as we continue to try to become a society that moves towards this communal, walkable neighborhood structure, like we used to have, because it ain't new, it's just coming back. As we continue to try to move backwards, but forwards at the same time, I think education is really important. Has there been anything that has surprised you that has come up, that is like topics that have risen to the top, or just even interesting things you've learned about the city as you've gone through the process, that's like that are just unique to the Pittsburgh comprehensive planning process?
Yeah, so I think one thing that I've appreciated, I think I've been to Pittsburgh maybe half a dozen plus times over this process so
Oh, you
far,
like it? That's a lie. No, oh, just for this process. Never mind.
yeah, and driven all over the place, and we've had to kind of rent a truck to pick up all the materials for the different events. So it's been fun, driving that around on these narrow, steep hills.
Yeah.
But the city is really beautiful. The architecture and the kind of drama of all the hills and the bridges, and I was really kind of surprised at the fact that there are 90 neighborhoods and how there's these different kind of isolated pockets. And I've kind of consistently heard from folks that like in a lot of cases their families are like really embedded in Pittsburgh, and it has almost this like small town communal feel. And that was something that I could kind of identify with, having like grown up in like a very small like rural town in Vermont. So that was something that I wasn't necessarily expecting coming to like, a big city to do a comprehensive plan. And I think that kind of carries through in how people talk about their, specific neighborhoods, but also, everybody that I've talked to also seems to like genuinely be kind of passionate about trying to make decisions that'll really benefit the city as a whole. So I think it's got this really interesting kind of mashup of these distributed smaller neighborhoods with unique identities, but folks really looking to try to bring these 90 neighborhoods to one, and that's, I think, the opportunity of this comprehensive plan is to, and with such a robust engagement process, to be able to synthesize comments that we've heard from, at this point, over like 25,000 individuals that have contributed feedback. So a really good representation of folks across different neighborhoods and different ethnicities, and ultimately to, put a set of recommendations together next year to help guide council and different departments within the city to make more informed and strategic decisions about, where to invest.
That was an awesome data point about 25,000. That's a lot of input. And I know there's various plans going on. The county has their own comprehensive plan and a climate action plan. And so I know a lot of folks are attending meetings and filling out surveys and attending workshops. Do you have any other fascinating data points for us from the plan?
Well, I think the goal at the outset was to try to engage 30,000 people. So that's, roughly a tenth of the population. So I think we're definitely on track to do that by probably the end of November. And I think we'll exceed that. But what I thought was really remarkable was with the summer of engagement, as you had mentioned, and just like for the audience, if they're not familiar, that was a program that we put together over the summer where we let folks apply for a mini grant, and they would be able to either host their own event or kind of put a table together and go out with comprehensive plan materials to existing events to kind of meet people where they are. And between those events and all of the specific like scenario planning workshops and the launch event, I think we're close to like 19,000 participants coming to those events and engaging like at tables, responding. We've had all these boards where people can place stickers to kind of rank their priorities and talk about different vision statements and whatnot. So I think the in-person engagement has really been fruitful. So yeah, really kind of proud of seeing those numbers, because the budget and the structure and the importance placed on engagement from the outset has really kind of enabled that level of participation, which is not typical of these processes. It's rare that you'll get 10% of a city's population engaged in something like this.
That is amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love to hear that. I think one thing that you mentioned, and I always think about, is I don't know if the city has always been good at moving forward without leaving communities behind. So you mentioned Route 65, which slapped right in the middle of the north side, right in the middle of Manchester, and created division there. How does this team balance innovation and inclusion, which Pittsburgh loves? You know, we are heading towards meds and eds. We're moving out of steel. Meds, eds, education, medicine, education is the future for the region. But how do we move towards that and ensuring Pittsburgh stays forward thinking without leaving certain communities behind, which has really been like the city's MO?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think there's a book that came out maybe a couple years ago now, but it's called Next Shift, and it's about Pittsburgh's transition from a steel town to like meds and eds, and I think one of the observations in that book is that, you know, on the surface, some of these meds and eds jobs sound better. There's still a lot of kind of supporting infrastructure and jobs, you know, within that you know, isn't necessarily lifting everybody up, you know, the same. So I think, you know, there's always opportunity to grow in that regard, and I think specifically to the like the loss of a lot of manufacturing jobs in the region. I think in some of the projections and scenario planning that we're looking at, the technical team is looking to kind of peer cities across the region and the nation, and looking at, you know, sectors that they've been able to grow. And I think that's really a way to think about keeping folks in Pittsburgh and providing opportunities for them, so that it's not necessarily just bringing kind of new folks in to get like master's degrees at CMU, but it's about providing opportunities for, you know, folks who've been living in Pittsburgh for a long time, and providing more job opportunities and looking for, you know, places within the city or the county to create those opportunities. And then, you know, as we were talking about the other kind of plan ingredients, you know, the big ones, mobility and transportation, like how can we get these people to work, so that, you know, comes down to thinking about, you know, strategic transportation infrastructure, but also, you know, where we locate those jobs. Are we bringing jobs into downtown, or are we putting them at the periphery, and where do we try to accommodate new housing growth as well?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sorry, that was. I'm really an intentional listener, so I'm just sitting there trying to digest it all. But okay, so moving forward as we move, because we're going into the next phase of planning, it's going to be the new year. So what can residents look forward to in the new year? Like, what are some of the things that we're going to be doing as a part of the comp plan? Because I know ultimately we're going to be giving out these recommendations, right? So how do they see drafts of the recommendations, and how should they be expecting to contribute in the next phase?
Yeah.
That's a good
So oh, go ahead, Alyssa.
I was just saying that's a good question.
Yeah. So as we all know, there's new administration coming in today. Well, I guess when we recorded this, it was, you know, day after election day. So there'll be a new mayor. So I know the transition team will be working kind of closely with DCP, and I know that next week there's a council post agenda on the comp plan, and really at the beginning of next week, so that'll be what will it be? It'll be like as of November 10th, there will be a digital survey on the scenario planning aspect. So over the next month plus, we'll be sharing this survey, you know, like broadly across social media, so that folks who weren't able to make it to the in-person events can share their thoughts, and all of that will be synthesized into a kind of hybrid scenario. We had put forth these three scenarios that kind of dial up and down the policy ingredients in different ways, and the way we're asking questions about them they're really focused on the impacts of, what each scenario is doing relative to housing or jobs in the economy or sustainability, or mobility infrastructure. And based on all that feedback, we'll be kind of putting together this hybrid preferred scenario with DCP and the technical team, and really building that off of this engagement. So then I would expect that, in early 2026, there will be a preferred scenario to kind of present to the public. And from that scenario, you almost start to reverse engineer the kind of policies, the projects, and the actions that the city would need to take towards implementation. And so in phase 5, some of the engagement work and technical planning work is really going to focus around creating these implementation timelines and trackers, so that the different city departments can understand, how they need to collaborate to achieve these goals that are outlined in the preferred scenario. So that's all kind of still TBD, but the idea is that we'll have a tracking dashboard that, is a useful coordination tool for all the city departments. But it's also something that would be, visible to the public, and we would have it kind of live on the PGH2050 website, so that, these planning recommendations don't just kind of go into a black box, so to speak,
Right.
but the city can kind of see progress being made along the way. And I think that helps with transparency and accountability, and the kind of underlying premise of including the entire city, in this process.
All right. So it's not too late. So if you are a resident or any stakeholder in the city and you want to contribute your voice, your ideas to this plan, you still have an opportunity to participate in the scenario planning workshops online via the survey, which will be distributing very soon.
Ethan, I'm curious, what's one message you'd like to leave with people about the importance of shaping this plan together as a city? You do this work for a living. You obviously believe in comprehensive planning. You believe in the strength of cities and their ability to allow folks to thrive and live. And so what's one thing that you would like to leave some folks with as we're shaping this city together for 2050 in the future?
Yeah, I think it's important to, understand a comprehensive plan really as a kind of guidebook for the future, and to acknowledge that all of these recommendations, aren't going to happen overnight. It's an incremental process, especially, talking about land use and zoning changes. There's a lot of factors that influence the speed at which things can happen, including, market dynamics that, impact developers' abilities to, build new projects, and the ability to finance new roadway infrastructure. But I think that, other elements of the recommendations that I believe will show up in the final plan are opportunities for kind of near-term easy wins that hopefully have stacked benefits across multiple issues. So I think, that's something that's important for us to, hear from Pittsburghers on, is like, what are those kind of low hanging fruit that, might be able to, help build and maintain the momentum of this planning process, acknowledging that some things are going to take years, if not decades, to kind of fully actualize. So I think just having that perspective of kind of near term, long term, and future term opportunities is important.
Right.
Yeah, like be present in the planning, provide your input, and understand that things are that there's a short term and there's a long term goal.
Right.
A little bit of patience sounds like there might be in the process too.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Well, any
I think
other
that's
questions
it.
for you, Muffy? All right.
No, I have no more questions. Thank
This
you,
is
Ethan.
great. I've been really curious about the tech team's perspective. I've been curious about numbers, and I think this language is very, very helpful, and like in the simplest terms for people to digest on why the city needs a plan for the future. So I was really excited for you to join us today, and thank you so much for being here. We really, really appreciate you, Ethan.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Of course. And so we will catch y'all next Tuesday here on Planning with a Purpose podcast. You can catch Muffy and I every Tuesday at 12 p.m. YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. Muffy, as always, you give me life. It's a pleasure. Thank you so
It's a
much.
pleasure, sis. Thank you. Thank you, Ethan.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
All right, y'all.
Bye.
Peace. Have a good one.